Welcome to the Powercat Podcast, the original K-State sports show. Here's your host, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to the Powercat Podcast, the good old-fashioned one, the ones in which the subscribers that go Powercat ask the questions. We answer them. A little bit different format today because we like putting these out on Tuesday nights while K-State basketball's playing. We got to wait for K-State basketball. We will for the second half. We're recording this in advance of the game to talk football with our own Cole Carmody, who will also be sitting in on the Powercat pregame podcast as we have suffered a late season injury. It happened at the dentist's office with Big B Brian Hanley, and he's sidelined this week, so we're scrambling. So, Cole, my challenge today is to have a conversation with you completely different than the conversation we'll have 2 minutes after we're done with this conversation to record the the Powercat pregame podcast. We're going to be two different people. These are going to be completely different.
I think that's possible. In fairness to everyone listening, both of us have actually seen the questions. So yes. It's not like it normally is. We're sorry. But in order to make both shows run properly, we needed to make sure that everything we're talking about is different, which, by the way, pretty different topics on both of those shows. So you're going to want to listen to both.
Yeah, this is there's some good stuff here from everyone at Wabash Station. And if you're not subscribing to Go Powercat, either the website or the YouTube site, please do so. The website, well, we got a sale coming up. I'm just going to tell you that in advance. I'm not sure when it's starting, but I will put that word out and you guys jump on it because I know you like those sales. And if you're not subscribing to the YouTube channel, please do it. We're closing in on 15K. Anything you do to interact with these videos helps our algorithm, and you can tell the difference when you do comment, hit the like button, and, of course, subscribe. Well, let's get going here, Cole, with your questions from Wabash Station. And I'm in charge of reading today. I'm read at the level of a drunken 12-year-old, which I don't even know what that'd be like, actually, Cole. I have no idea what a drunken 12, but it could be interesting because I don't wear my glasses on the podcast. So now I got to read without my glasses. Cat and Kahlo, one of our regulars. See, you could be famous too by being part of this if you're a subscriber to Go Powercat. Cat and Kahlo, being a fan and overreacting is normal. I agree. Things are never as good nor as bad as we think. So help us out and provide a rational assessment of the short and long-term prospects for KSU football. Cole, give me your thoughts.
Well, this is kind of a loaded question, and there's a lot to unpack here. So I'm happy we're starting the podcast with this question, by the way, because I think that there's a lot of folks that are listening, and it feels like every single time we do a podcast, the mood goes from, wow, K-State either won and they're never going to lose a single game again, or K-State lost and they're never going to win a single game again. And that lasts on the post-game podcast. And then we do the big tour of the K-State Insiders, and the mood starts to change a little bit. By the time it's the Friday walkthrough, people have a very relevant head, a very calm head. Fitz, here's where I'm at. I think that there's no need to panic with this team yet. And I say yet because every single game is like a different chapter in a book. And sometimes the book can start off really good and it can have a horrible ending. Other times the book can start off horrible and have a great ending, and your perspective changes completely. Well, we don't really know how this story is going to end. You might think you know, but we really have no idea. And if history tells us anything, history tells us that Chris Klieman is a really good football coach, not just from his time at K-State, but from his stops elsewhere. And I am choosing to believe in history that Chris Klieman can find a way to get this thing figured out, because I think with him in charge, they have the right man. He's been proven to make whatever tough decisions you want to make. He's made those decisions.
Yeah.
And so I think they've got the right man in charge. So as far as long-term goes, I mean, we've seen this team fall apart like they did in 2020, and they rebounded, and 2 years later won a Big 12 championship. So honestly, Fitz, I'm not worried about the long-term prospects.
I'm not either. And I don't know, Cat and Kahlo, what the short-term prospects are. I'm as confused as anyone by what we saw last Saturday, a completely effortless, heartless, disappointing performance. They don't look interested in playing football. I didn't get a great vibe off of the Monday press conference. I will be more surprised if they win these two to finish the season than if they lose these two. That's the simple truth. I see trouble brewing just because something has malfunctioned within the inner workings of this team. We've hinted at locker room troubles. I don't even think this was related to that. I just think this team is not functioning as a unit. I don't know what else to say. The coaching hasn't been up to snuff. The playing hasn't been up to snuff. I don't think anyone's doing their job very well right now. But as you said, I agree with it 100%. I think the long-term characteristics of this program are set. And as long as Chris Klieman's in charge, they'll fix whatever ails them. It might take the offseason to do so, but they will fix it. And they'll be back towards the top of the Big 12. As bad as this has seemed, Cole, I want people to keep this in mind. The contenders for the Big 12 title this year were supposed to be Utah, Oklahoma State, Arizona, K-State, and KU and Iowa State kind of on the outside of that. Well, Kansas State's the only one that's been hanging around in that discussion. Iowa State's now, there solidly. That'll be a huge game in the season. And Kansas, well, they're starting to play like the team we thought they'd be, but they're nowhere near contending for the Big 12 title. They're just ruining everyone else's fun by beating them. So I think long-term, it's going to be okay. Short-term, there's some stuff to work through, and we'll see what this team's made of if they can overcome that.
Well, and two, with the short term, like I guess what is your definition of short term? Is your short term definition like the next 2 games to end the season? Because I mean, they could very easily go 1-1, and I mean, I don't think anybody would be happy with that. But also, I don't think anybody's going to be happy with 2-0. So I mean, nobody inside of that building is going to be happy with a 9-3 season. And I think the way that we look at the college football playoff and it kind of changes people's opinions on seasons, because if you don't make that college football playoff, inevitably, nobody is going to be happy. It's not going to be a successful season if you don't make the playoffs for any program. But when you look at the Big 12, how many of these teams are built to consistently be at the top? That is my question. And I think Iowa State can be at the top consistently. Matt Campbell's proven. He's a proven winner. Can he win 10 games? Maybe not, but he's been proven to be at the top. Colorado with Deion Sanders, I'm sorry, Fitz, but when you have Michael Irvin go on a national TV show, somebody asks you about a guy who you're, by all intents and purposes, best friends with and was your teammate, when Michael Irvin says he has it on extremely good sources that if the Cowboys draft Shedeur Sanders, that Deion Sanders would be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, if those rumors are flying around, I'm not convinced. And so I would love for Colorado to be good long term, but until we hear definitively that this coach is going to stay, I'm not sold on any team. I think K-State can still be in that conversation every single year. And like I tell people, if you are playing meaningful football into November every single season, to me, that's where you want to be.
I know the season's mostly done in terms of regular season, but the situation in which Kansas State finds itself in, this can be a 10-3 team after a bowl game or a 7-6 team. Those are wildly different seasons. So they're still in charge of defining what kind of team they want to be, how they want to be remembered. Because if you're the team that won 10 games, won double-digit games, and was disappointing, you've set a standard.
Yep.
You really have. It might be an unreasonable standard some seasons, but it's kind of where K-Staters want to be. I don't think it's necessarily fair that they've decided this team is awful because they're not going to win a Big 12 title. Winning 10 games, I've said it over and over since Bill Snyder was doing it. Don't take it for granted. It's not easy. It's really difficult. And if they can do that, it's incredible. But if they fold up tent, end up going to the Liberty Bowl and losing another game and 7-6, everyone has a right to be upset by that.
Yep.
And I
agreed
get
with
it.
that. Yep.
Move on to the next question. Buccaneers Cat 1786. This dude is so old. That's his graduation year from Kansas State. That's not his birth year. Really, he went to K-State before it existed. Overachiever. This one's long. Let's see if I can get through it. Coach Klieman said yesterday, being Monday, that when he talks to recruits, screwed up already, and their parents, he tells them that when they leave college, he wants them to be prepared to be good husbands, fathers, community leaders, among other positive attributes. He also said he wants teams prepared to handle adversity because life is filled with adversity. Do you think as a whole, even though it's all right to be upset about a loss or by the way the team played, our fan base needs to deal with adversity? It's a really good question. You know what? I don't feel like it's the fans' job to deal with adversity. You might have a different take on this, Cole. I think fans are fanning. Are they overreacting? Some of them, yeah. Fire Chris Klieman, come on. Why don't you ask him? Why don't you ask questions about the play calling? Why they run this? Come on, man. That's no. I mean, some of you are overreacting, but as Big B always says, a fan is short of fanatic. Some of you are fanatic, and I get it. And it's great to have that passion. The worst end of it is, oh, they're losing. Who cares? Let's move on to basketball season. We know what I'm talking about. Yeah, fans are invested in this. This is important to the culture of Kansas State University. And I expect them to be upset when things aren't going well. Overreact? I expect that too. I wish it didn't happen, but it's just human nature. But yes, I agree in the sense that some of you are acting like this is the worst thing ever to happen, that life is over, and you're getting carried away. Trust me, it's not. Trust me, it's not. And I get why everyone's upset. That Arizona State game, Cole, was so out of context and unbelievable and sickening to watch. Sickening. K-State fans deserve better than that. They deserve a better effort. Maybe they don't deserve a better outcome. They deserve a better effort. Nobody likes to see a team go through the motions. The one thing K-State fans expect from their teams is you bust your ass. You overcome that adversity, whether it's in a game or in a season or just overall in how you're playing. So I don't know. That's how I'd answer it. Cole, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna tell anybody how to fan. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm at. And you can cope with things however you want to cope with it. But I also, in that same breath, think that sometimes when you are looking at history, and that's kind of how I tend to look at things, you have to look at what the past has brought. Right? Again, I've been banging this drum all season long when it comes to Iowa State. And I know this question isn't about Iowa State. They've never won 10 games. So when they started off undefeated, let's see where they are in 3 weeks. And I'm banging the drum again. Like, if you have faith in this program, you're probably where I am. And it's because you know what this coaching staff has done in the past. Whenever we seem to count this team out, they find a way to figure it out.
Mhm.
And maybe they don't this time. Very realistic chance they don't. And if that's the case, then you can be upset. Then you can be frustrated. You can be frustrated right now. Again, K-State has set that standard. They've told everyone they want to win championships. Chris Klieman alluded to it. Those guys came back to win a Big 12 championship, and they're not going to do that this year. But again, that doesn't mean that it has to be a failure of a season. Are they dealing with some adversity right now? Absolutely. But I think as fans, you just have to look at kind of the bigger picture, because when you are out of it, what do you have? If every game didn't matter, because I've heard people say that, well, the game against Cincinnati doesn't matter. The game against Iowa State doesn't matter. Well, if it doesn't matter, then why even play the games? Just shut it down at the end of the season. And once you're eliminated from making the Big 12 title, don't even play. But guess what? I don't think the players have that attitude. I mean, at least I hope they don't. And if they do, then they're not going to be here next year. That's what we saw what happened last year. Those guys who felt like they didn't need to play because they were out of contention for the Big 12 title, they're gone. And so I don't think having blind faith is good. I just don't, because when you have blind faith, sometimes you get led astray. But I do think that having faith based off of previous results is okay.
Yep, I agree. That's really good stuff. Buccaneer Cat, 1786. Congratulations on being really old. Let's go on to another regular. Go Stay Kate. She's beautiful. She's just gorgeous. Did the downward spiral in football start at the same time Klieman started having personal problems? Did we slide because Klieman is having to do his assistant's jobs and hasn't had enough of him to go around recently? Ironically, we didn't know it at the time, but this health thing did pop up the day of the Houston game, apparently. And I don't know if it distracted him there. I'm not sure. I've said this on another podcast, but you kind of got at it a little bit. Go K-State or Stay Kate. Boy, it's hard. That I'm disappointed in the coaches, those around him that haven't picked up the slack. And maybe they thought they had, but the performance we saw last Saturday was a poorly coached team. And maybe that is the adversity that Chris Klieman's faced. Looks like he's coming out of it. Looks like they got some good news. I don't know what that news is. I know what the situation is, and it hasn't been good. So that That's very welcome. But yeah, I don't know that we can blame any of this on it or all of it on it. All I know is it's part of life. It happened. It's part of the culture of the program. Everyone loves Chris Klieman, and when you're a player or a coach and you see him hurting, that hurts you. And maybe that did reflect on their performance, but I think he's trying to put a better foot forward now, trying to push this team. He knows that maybe his eye was off the ball a little bit last weekend, and I think he's kicking himself, Cole. I think he's absolutely furious at himself more than anything. Not that he did anything wrong or shouldn't have been worrying, but that it happened and it just took place. And I think that's why he was really upset after the game. He's got a lot of pent up emotions. And also, you know what? He screwed up. The team screwed up. When the team screws up royally like that, it's his fault, and he knows it. And he took the blame on his shoulders. But there's enough blame for everyone.
I've covered 4 coaches at K-State, and it's been Bruce Weber, Chris Klieman, Jerome Tang, and then Pete Hughes for baseball. And all of the coaches are completely different, which makes, everybody's different. But the biggest 2 things that I take away, and the guys who I cover most closely is Jerome Tang and Chris Klieman. And they, I believe, are complete opposites when it comes to dealing with things that happen like that, like what happened Saturday, and quite frankly, what happened Thursday. Because with Coach Tang, one of 2 things happens after a loss. He's either very visibly frustrated or he has a very optimistic look. And I think he wears his emotions on his sleeve so much to where you know exactly what he's thinking. And with Coach Klieman, I feel like it's kind of the same thing, only he handles it in a completely different manner. When something is very, very bad, you will know about it. When something's good, you'll have no idea. If they played amazing, you'll never know. If they played really bad like they did on Saturday, it was very apparent that something was bothering him. But guess what? On Monday, he came back into the press conference and those emotions were completely gone. And I think that that's the difference between Klieman and Tang, is that the way they express themselves is completely different. And with Coach Klieman, I'm of the opinion that he takes everything so personally. And when they lose, he truly believes that it's on him. It doesn't matter if he had the perfect game plan and K-State didn't execute. If he had the perfect game plan and he lost to Alabama like they did in the Sugar Bowl, he believes, and he will go up there and say that he did not have the players ready to play. That is the one quality about great leaders, is that to a fault, they will take the blame. And I think that sometimes that can be too much for Coach Klieman. Sometimes he can take too much blame. And you're right, Fitz. It is a little disappointing because he does have guys that have been around him for years. And maybe behind closed doors, this is happening. I don't know. That should be able to pick him up when he's down. And you hope that can happen. And I think this week we'll see a better performance. It's a good question, though. And it's definitely worth talking about because Chris Klieman is the heartbeat of this program.
Yep, he really is. And it was difficult to watch that. As someone who knows Chris Klieman, really enjoys Chris Klieman, he was like a raw nerve. It's like everything was affecting him. And also keep in mind, he had his own health issues as a backdrop to all this. So it's been kind of a wild year. And some people wondered why I started the press conference on Monday asking if he's going to retire, because that rumor had run rampant and was reaching, into the high school recruiting, high school coaching levels where you're recruiting players. And I thought, let's get it out there and put it on the table. And no, he's not thinking about that. In fact, everyone around said, no, he's really decisive right now that he's going to get this thing fixed. So we'll see. It's 10-3 still on the table. Probably going to the playoff is way gone. Even if it has a Big 12 champion, if K-State could pull that off, I could see the committee saying, nah, we ain't doing it with 3 losses. But it's been an entertaining year of Big 12 football, and the chaos is kind of crescendoed. It's reached a level where it's too much. It's too much chaos now, and KU is going to try to continue it with Colorado as the Big 12 is looking like it's in shambles, but in reality, it's just hyper competitive. Snare Cat 3, reading between the lines, but Avery doesn't seem happy with our offensive schemes. He said something to the effect that they play better when they're allowed to play loose. Is it an overreaction to think we are in danger of losing Avery to the transfer portal? No. You wanted me to say, yeah, it's an overreaction. It's not. It's not an overreaction because I don't think Avery's leaving. I really don't. And but in this era, you don't know. I would bet there's been at least one head coach calling the Johnson household this year in violation of NCAA rules, but not giving two craps about it. Because programs like, and I'm just going to bring out two here that seem obvious, Texas A&M and Oregon would love to have him, and they have money. So we'll see how that plays out. I think the important part, though, is not worrying about that. That's down the road. I'm with you. Let's focus on what is ailing this offense to fix it so Avery can play his game. And I'm not bringing Avery a fault here. I think there's some opportunities he's had to run the ball when he's not. K-State's first drive that ended in a missed field goal. He could have run that ball in. He could have walked that ball in the end zone, but he threw a pass that was incomplete. And that's where I'm getting a little unnerved by this. Isn't the Avery anyone signed up for. I know they want to protect him from injury, but at some point you've got to put him on the line to do it. And they didn't really ever do that against Arizona State. They had a ill-advised play call. Let's run all of our play calls at the end zone through the same gap.
Yeah.
It was just bizarre. So I agree. I think we'll see Kansas State go faster. Let's remember last year, didn't we have this conversation about K-State's offense and Colin Klein? It was too slow pace. And once they picked up the offensive pace, boom, it worked. We'll get to that and start playing some better football because I know why they went slow. They want to keep their defense rested, but you got to score points, and they're not doing it with offense at the current pace.
No, and I agree with everything that you said. You know, I'm of the opinion that nobody is untouchable in this day and age. I mean, if Avery Johnson transferred, I don't think anybody would be surprised. I just think that has to do in today's college. If DJ Giddens decided to transfer, I wouldn't be surprised. Like nobody is immune to that. Now, are certain guys maybe more bought in than others? I would say, yeah, I think Avery's bought into what K-State's doing. I think he has bought in. He is the leader of this team. But at the end of the day, these guys have the opportunity to do what's best for them. Like I think sometimes fans can kind of forget that. Like it's not the old days where you are committed to a school and you are not allowed to leave. I mean, how many times would guys be in horrible situations where they would have no opportunity to go somewhere else and they just wasted 4 years of their athletic peak and their athletic prime? And so I know it's completely different. I don't think Avery's going to leave, but again, nobody leaving would surprise me. It has nothing to do with the culture, but I just don't get surprised because it is the day and age that we live in. Anybody, any school, anywhere.
Yep. And I'm going to be really blunt here, as I like to do. If Avery plays really well these last two games and, sets him up for a pretty good bowl game at 10-2 and then decides to transfer, that will hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But again, if Avery plays as Avery's been playing, and even if they win, but he doesn't play particularly well these last two games and then decides to transfer, Cole, there'll be disappointment, but he hasn't been at the level any of us expected. And part of it might be my fault because I set those expectations up for a lot of people. I'm listening to coaches. I'm watching him practice. I know what kind of leader he is. I thought he'd be further down the road. I think the Colorado game when he played so well but got hit extremely hard and dinged up, I think it ruined him. I don't know if it's mental or physical, but he hasn't been the same since that game. And he was just starting to play well. Hopefully they can get him back on track. And Chris Klieman just basically telegraphed Cincinnati, we're going to run him. You got to stop him. And I hope he's healthy to do so. And I hope he's definitive in his running ability. If you're going to tuck the ball, go and try to beat him upfield. We'll see how it plays out.
I still think.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, Fitz, I still think that this kid is the face of the program, and
I agree.
You know what? He is going to either take the blame or be the hero these next few weeks. And I'm excited to watch him play because I really do believe that he still has another gear to get to. And we've seen it. We've seen flashes. And it's just going to be a matter of time before he puts it all together.
I agree. I'm the last person that wants to see him go. I think the world of him and his family, and hopefully he's at Kansas State, and hopefully they find a way to kind of bend the offense a little bit better to Avery's needs. But my question, I guess, at the end of the day, Cole, is why didn't they do that?
Right. And that's a coaching problem. That is not an Avery problem.
You got to put your players in a position to succeed, and not letting him be himself. I've been saying it since the start. You got to let him be himself. You can't tell him not to run because that's not who he is. So now that you've taken the running off the table, he's not a very good quarterback at times. You've got to run him. You just have to. Claws out, balls out, takes it to the end of the first half as we have Ryan Gilbert standing by. That's not true at all. You see, that's a little trick I pull. I say standing by. It's actually like 5:30 right now. Basketball tips at 7. He'll be done with work about 10:30, 11. Right then, that's when he'll be standing by. But it sounded good. Do I tell too much sometimes, Cole?
No.
Okay.
No.
Claws out, balls out. One of my favorites. I know not everyone can get touches, but at this point in the season and the trajectory we're headed should Joe Jackson see more playing time, maybe 5 snaps a game. He looks like a guy who could energize this team. Absolutely, and I think we'll see him, Cole, because I don't think Dylan will be back. If you've got a hamstring injury, you're not bouncing back in a week, and that probably goes for Keegan too. So if that happens, I thought it was interesting. Chris Klieman said at the press conference, we had 10 to 12 plays designed for Dylan. That all went out the window when he got injured, but I do regret not running some of those plays with Joe Jackson. I do too. Every time I've seen this kid, I like what I see.
Yep.
Put him in a position to succeed. He had another touchdown. He's effective. Play him. Put him in Dylan's role this week.
Yep.
Don't just say, hey, we don't have Dylan, so we're not going to do this and this. Let Joe do it. Now, I don't know how good a receiver is. Maybe that's not his thing.
He had a nice catch on the sideline.
Yep.
That was a really good catch.
Cole, I don't know how you feel, but I'm like all in on Joe Jackson. I'm all in on Trey Spivey. I'm all in on Fabris. Play some of these young guys. Play the guys that are hungry. Play the guys that want to be out there, because one of those guys might provide the spark to the rest of the team to wake the hell up and start playing with a little more passion.
100%. Fitz, like, I was so excited to see Joe Jackson get into the game because that was a guy who I thought we might see in the bowl game last year. And instead they went for LaJames White. And if you remember at the beginning part of the year, LaJames White was listed as an or with Dylan Edwards, and Joe Jackson wasn't even on the depth chart. And everybody's looking around going like, what? But no, I'm so bought in on Joe Jackson. One of the things that made him great when he was coming out of high school was his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield too.
Yep.
I mean, they would literally use him as a receiver. And so this kid is dynamic. He can make plays. Fitz, next year, it really wouldn't surprise me if DJ does indeed decide to move on, if Joe Jackson is the one who's getting the lion's share of the reps, because this guy is a stud. Like, I am all in on Joe Jackson, and I hope he gets more than 5 snaps, quite honestly. He needs to play 10 or 15 snaps on offense because he is a playmaker when he gets the ball in his hands, and the running back room has some talent. Devon Rice was returning kicks in place of Dylan Edwards on Saturday. And that's another guy, Bishop Gorman product from Las Vegas, one of the best high school football programs in the country. He's electric with the ball. And so, yeah, play the young guys. And it's not because the old guys can't do it. I don't think that. It's just because the young guys can do it. And so if they can do it, then there's no use of holding them back. Let them play and see what you got.
I've said it a million times. I feel like if you're going to have a player playing with mistakes and it's an older guy, get him off the field and let a younger player make those mistakes and learn from them. You're at that point of the season. The Big 12 championship is all but out the window, and it certainly is if you lose this one. I think it's probably done, DOA right now, but you still got some opportunities. And as I mentioned earlier, you can have a 10-win season. Make that a goal. Get together, say we're going to do this. And whatever's going on behind the scenes that's distracting this team, cut it out. I mean, none of you, even if you're thinking about your NIL, your career, your bag of money, you, it's not working. What you're doing isn't working. It's not reflecting well on individuals or the team. So if the team succeeds, you succeed. And that's the kind of players people want. They don't want people that are going to come in and maybe weigh down their locker room. There's a lot at stake here. Be a very interesting game. The best part of this game is we're not going to have Ryan Gilbert there.
Yes.
I think we can all agree that that he'll be in the islands. He's going to cover the game from Paradise, because if K-State wins their first game, he's off on Saturday. It's perfect. If they lose, well, we got bigger issues. And we're going to talk about basketball in the next segment of the Powercat podcast. This is before the game against Mississippi Valley State. What's their mascot again?
The Delta Devils.
The Delta Devils. What was the original name of that school?
Well, that was the team they beat, not them.
Oh, that's right. Dang it. Dang it. That was a good story. I just screwed up. We'll be back after this break. It's going to seem like it was like 8 seconds long. It's going to be like hours. Just screwing with your mind now, aren't I?
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors. Welcome back to the show. Let's head back to the studio.
Welcome back to the Powercat Podcast. As promised, we're now post-game Kansas State basketball, a 74-56 victory over Mississippi Valley State. And I have ordered Ryan Gilbert not to collect questions from Wabash Station because they were asked before the game. I just want to talk about what you saw in person, what I saw on TV as I sat here in the studio. Gills, that was horrendous. That's a horrible Mississippi Valley State team. A horrible team. What's up with this team?
I wish I knew. I think everybody wishes they knew, and there wasn't as much panic or concern in the post-game press conference, whether that was the words of Jerome Tang or Coleman Hawkins. And Coleman, he acknowledged it himself. He said he would give himself an F. He knows that fans booing him would give him an F, but it is early in the season. There was no real sense of panic from Tang, and I guess where fans might get frustrated or concerned with that is you have that also going on with football, and there was no real concern or panic after the Houston loss. Well, that led to another bad performance against Arizona State. So, Kansas State in the first half, not good. In the second half, it was better against Mississippi Valley State. Kansas State did not make open shots. They missed their first 10 from deep before David Castillo connected from long range. And, if Kansas State does hit some of those open shots, maybe we view this Fitz a little differently. But, Missouri beat this team like 205-8 or something like that. This team Mississippi Valley State is bad. The metrics, the numbers, the statistics, they rank near the last, if not last, depending on what you're looking at. And so it would have been nice, given what happened against LSU, to see K-State blow the doors off of, in this game. And obviously that didn't happen. A win's a win. But, last year you go back to the net rating. Okay, the net's not going to like an 18-point win over Mississippi Valley State. No. The net would have preferred a 40-point blowout over that team.
No, everyone would have. I got news for Coleman Hawkins, and this is the topic of tomorrow's daily delivery, or today's daily delivery, I guess. That appears at 9 a.m. K-State fans will tolerate not playing well. He's not trying to play. He's just kind of going through the motions, and he's 6'10". He grabbed a bunch of rebounds. He's not playing well. He's not playing hard. He's not playing inspired. He's playing like a guy that's fat and happy with a big payout. And K-State are going to find it incredibly distasteful. They're not going to put up with that.
Yeah, you mentioned the rebounding, and Mississippi State, I think K-State's best formula to win this game might have been Hawkins, Ugonna-Onyenso, Byfall, David Gasson, and Buddy Rich, because Kansas State had just had so much more size against them. So, I'd have to go back and watch the tape and see the effort from Coleman Hawkins with regards to rebounding. But, if you're 6'10", 7 foot, you're going to get a lot of rebounds against that type of team. But yeah, I always harp on it, man. Coleman Hawkins, don't think that he has to be a scorer. He can impact the game in other ways. At the same time, though, it would be nice to see him score his first points before there were 5 minutes left in the second half of that game. So it's and Coleman Hawkins, I don't want to just pinpoint this all on him. Top to bottom, Kansas State did not play well, but given the alleged NIL numbers, I think it's fair. I saw this on X on social media the other day with football, with fans booing. These guys are getting paid, right? And so whether you want to boo them or not, it's kind of hard to. These are, in a way, professional athletes, right, Fitz? And so Coleman Hawkins, he acknowledged it though. He said, like I said earlier, he gave himself an F, and he knows he has to be better. And so obviously maybe a nice change of pace, a change of scenery, certainly in the Virgin Islands, can help this team get back on the right track. And they, like I said, for as bad as that first half was against Mississippi Valley State, they did kind of end it on a decent note in that second half as shots kind of started to fall.
It did a little bit. They still shot 35% from the field for the day, and take away 2 big men, and it's 25%. It was pretty pitiful. Do we know where Doug McDaniel was?
Nope. Coach's decision. And Kellis Robinette asked him and kind of tried to follow up. Was that a motivational factor or something? And Tang just said no, coach's decision, and left it at that. So no, we don't, especially at, immediately after the game. To my knowledge, it was news to us that he didn't play in this game. He didn't start, and you thought, okay, maybe CJ Jones maybe earned that in practice. But as a few minutes went on in this game, something's going on. We don't know if that's, we don't know, but it's frustrating. Regardless of what happened, Doug McDaniel played really, really, really good against LSU. That was the lone bright spot really in that game. And it sucks that he can't build upon that. And, whenever the next time McDaniel checks in, that's the first game in the Virgin Islands. That's early in Big 12 play, whatever, regardless when that is, he's kind of starting from square one, so to speak, because he's not building off of previous performances.
Yeah, there's some issues here, and it's obvious there's issues. And Coach Jerome Tang's trying to get it under control. This is a great opportunity, though. Get away from town, go to someplace beautiful, hang out, have some team building, win some games. Because, Gills, they should win this tournament fairly easily.
It should, yeah. And you'll see some teams that get into the NCAA tournament winning their conference, and so it's not a terrible field. But yeah, Fitz, this is the only Power 6 team in the field, right? So you've got to go out and win it convincingly. And so, last year Kansas State played against Miami and Providence. Well, if that was the case this year, I'd be, concerned that, yeah, you're getting away and a change of pace, but those are really, I guess not really good teams. But at the time last year, those looked like some really good teams. But now you have a chance to kind of release the demons. I expected Kansas State to do that from the opening tip against Mississippi Valley State. That was not the case. It took them 20 minutes before they really kind of settled in and kind of bullied their opponent. But against George Washington on Friday is the first game, you've got to come out and set the tone early on. That was maybe the opposite against LSU. K-State did start strong, and then for whatever reason, LSU kind of figured them out. So yeah, it's an important 3 games, and it's 3 games. This is 3 games. I know last year's tournament was only 2. This is 3 games. So if you play poor, that is going to be a big mark on your resume. You can't get away with struggling for 3 straight games. That does have a lot of weight. That's almost a 10th of your games for the whole season. So if you struggle here in Paradise, it's going to cost you on your resume. But if you play well, help out your net rating, give your guys some confidence as you kind of head into the later portions of non-conference play. And Doug McDaniel, maybe he gets going. Coleman Hawkins gets the ball through the net. It can go well and it could go badly for Kansas State, but it's definitely an opportunity to kind of change things up. You look at guys going in the transfer portal, getting a new change of pace. Well, what's different than this? You're getting a very different atmosphere in college basketball in the Virgin Islands.
K-State led 21-7 with about 5.5 minutes left in the first half and gave up a 16-2 run to an absolute trash team. And Jerome Tang keeps talking about this, that they build leads and cruise. And that's kind of their flaw, their personality defect. They're not even big leads. They're up 14 points. You can't cruise. You can't cruise on that. And when you cruise so much that a horrendous team can come back and tie you up before halftime, I don't know. You got to try to be that bad. Gills, I hate to be harsh, but that was ugly.
I'm not sure if it's coaching, if it's just the guys. I don't know what the true answer is. I don't know who's at blame for it, but yeah, you've got to keep your foot on the gas until the reserves go in with a few minutes left. You just have to. And again, I don't know where you fix that, where the root cause is, but it looked like K-State was on track to maybe cover that 39.5-point spread halfway through the second half if they just kept their foot on the gas, but they didn't. Mississippi Valley State got it down to like 10 points relatively late in that game. And so, Kansas State, they've shown that they can, like Jerome Tang says, they can play those perfect minutes. He wants to see X number of perfect minutes in a game. He always harps on that. They've shown they can play that. I don't know if it's complacency. I don't know what the issue is, like I said, but you've got to keep your foot on the gas in those situations. You can't put on cruise control.
Well, this is a huge trip for Kansas State basketball. You will be on it. You're going to the Virgin Islands to work on that all-body tan and cover some basketball for us. They need to win 3, come home, regroup, and just start playing harder. Just put more effort into it. It's insane to watch how lazy this team can be, and lackadaisical maybe is a better word, just going through the motions. Maybe they'll get that solved. Ryan Gilbert, thank you very much. Sorry you had to go watch that game. We do not offer hazard pay at gopowercat.com. That was known as watching basketball for many years for me, what you saw tonight. That's it for the Powercat Podcast. We'll have the pregame podcast tomorrow. We've got all kinds of coverage coming up as Kansas State football faces a huge game. Gilbert won't be there because he will be in paradise. He's leaving me here to cover a cold game while he's in paradise. That's it.
I hope it's not as bad as last year when I came back. It was a snow game within a few days against Iowa State. That was just unfair. So I hope the weather's not as brutal when I return.
Well, and we've got to drive to Iowa State this time. So I got to tell you, if it's snowing like that, brother, we ain't going. We're going to turn around. Even if we're like right outside of Des Moines, we're going to go back to the casino and just hang out.
Works for me.
That's it for the podcast. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week with another edition. And of course, get ready for your pregame podcast and the Friday walkthrough as we get closer to the Cats and Bearcats on Saturday night at the Bill.
This has been a GoPowerCat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.